I think we're up and running now.
Said that's all.
Uh-huh. Do 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 do. Do do do. Do 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 do. It's gotta be somewhere. I don't know where. But anyhow, how's everyone's weekend? Happy 4th of July.
Yes.
Happy everything's
Happy all the stuffs.
all the stuffs and the things.
Today's Canada Day.
Oh yeah, it's Canada Day. How's Canada doing lately?
Well, I would say
Today's
they are trying to rise from the ashes of the children that were found at that school.
Oh,
So right now there are millions of people walking the streets wearing orange in observance of them. They're holding powwows and all kinds of things. The First Nations have all pretty much gathered together in their regalia, and they're drawing some light to the atrocities, absolute atrocities that happened to those poor kids. So not much of a Canada Day as it is an Indigenous Peoples Day today.
Yeah, it's rough.
As it should be.
Well, now Canada had both the US did too. They had those schools where they would grab kids off of, but from Native families, Indigenous families, and ship them off to school to try to make them European.
Yeah.
But I've read a little bit about it. There was a lot of violence that happened there, sexual violence, and I think one of the ways that Canada has it a little more.
I have to send the link to him again.
Okay. I think that one of the reasons Canada is having a harder time with it is probably because of it was more recent with them.
Yeah.
So there's
tons of testimony. People who were actually there.
Family members still alive. People still alive.
Lots and lots of people still alive. They're collecting. They're claiming that there were fires that burned the records, in particularly the one school. So they're petitioning to collect the diaries of the people that worked there, the staff members, and the Catholic Church is pushing back on that, claiming that those are personal. And
did the Catholic run the?
Yeah, it was run by the nunnery, and these kids could have died for lots of different reasons. Obviously, the biggest issue is their families weren't notified. They weren't given proper burial.
Well, the biggest issue
their
is
names weren't recorded.
Their family they were just taken from their family.
Yeah.
Just wholesale.
Yeah, pretty sad. Pretty sad stuff.
Yeah, it's heinous.
Yeah.
The whole situation is heinous.
Absolutely. So we stand with you, Canada.
Yeah, or stand with the Indigenous people. Especially, man, I hope that humanity's done with that.
So sad.
And it's happened everywhere.
Sure.
We shouldn't just point it out in Canada. It's happened everywhere.
Sure.
I think Canada's got it hit hardest because it's more recent.
Yeah, and I think the body count is now above 1,000, so it's a big deal.
That's huge.
It's a big deal.
It's horrible.
Yeah.
So, Bill Cosby's out.
Oh, Bill Cosby. I don't know what to think about that.
I think they need to take the prosecutors out because the prosecutors are why he's out. It's specifically the prosecutors.
Claimed a mistrial for
No,
whatever reason.
they told Bill Cosby, you go to civil court and pay all the retribution money to them, and we won't pursue criminal charges. Hi, Shannon. Hi, Les. Hi, Ryan.
How's it going,
Good
guys?
to see you guys. Shannon was on my happy hour show last week. Outstanding interview. She is running for House in the 3rd District in this upcoming go-around.
It was a great interview, Shannon.
Yes. All right. Nathaniel's here. Hey, Nathaniel.
Hi again.
What's up, guys? How are you? Welcome.
Good. How are you?
Good. Yeah, we were
I'm
just
excited
chatting about Bill Cosby getting cut loose. Slide over this way.
I don't understand that at all.
Well, here's what happened.
That's my 2 bits. That's my 2 cents.
The prosecutors, the prosecutors, they told him that if he goes through the civil court and pays the retribution and all that other stuff, that they won't come after him criminally. So he goes to the civil court, and in civil court, you don't have Fifth Amendment right. So he goes into civil court. He gets called up to testify. He testifies, and then the prosecutors then turn around and take his testimony and throw that into a criminal case, therefore doing a runaround on his Fifth Amendment right. Because they did that and broke his civil rights. Now, had they done that to a poor person, they would have gotten away with it. But they did it to a very rich man.
Yeah.
And a very rich man has very good lawyers. So they broke their contract with his civil rights. Therefore, his trial's thrown out. And honestly, they can't go after any of the others because of the time delay. And they probably wouldn't get away with it because of the prejudicial, him already being tried and released. That would bring prejudice into any court proceedings. So they dropped the ball on that. And I hope the people just get dog shit, put it in paper bags, light it on fire, and put it on the prosecutor's doorstep.
Old school, man. I used to do that as a kid. Let's go out there and hope for the best.
Yeah. So how's life treating you since we last spoke?
The research has taken off in deeper aspects. Just keep doing shows and just focusing on the UFO abduction phenomenon for now. I think that it's the most problematic area of my work, and I do believe it's a threat. I think it's laughable to think that it's not. I mean, when we're having entities that are pulling souls out of bodies, it's kind of disturbing.
Definitely.
For sure. So, yeah, I've seen you've had a lot of interviews, and it is drifting more towards the connection between aliens and demons, and
correct.
And that's kind of what we want to drill in on today is
are aliens demons? Because people swing both ways. They're like, no, they're not, and then yes, they are.
Yes. Well, you know what? Okay, so classically speaking, that would mean, okay, are aliens fallen angels? I don't believe that's true. In the sense that they are somehow deity that fell from the graces of God. And, they left heaven, they brought a bunch of each other with them. And now we have, semi-deity entities. I don't believe that's the case. Matter of fact, the earliest translation of an angel was a deceased person, ghosts, which I do believe that is what these are for the most part. They're translucent in nature. They have been using our belief systems against us in very troubling ways, which we'll get into today when we talk more about it. But I don't believe that they're classically understood as demons, horns and hooves. I believe that they are liminal beings. So most of them, if not all of them, have lived as humans, and they've died and they've mutated into these creatures. I think also that's why that's why the UFO abduction phenomenon has everything to do about the soul. As a matter of fact, when Dr. Carla Turner's abductees was told, we're giving you the afterlife. We're making you immortal. Which is very disturbing to me. Who gives them that right?
And why would you want it?
Right. Yeah, I don't want to be alive forever.
Yeah.
Unless the Buckeyes are going to win every year. Then I'm all down for it. I'll be there.
I guess if it was like Utopia, then perhaps.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Well, Ohio
Yeah,
just made it legal for college students to
yeah.
use their likeness and stuff to make money. So you'll
It's about
probably get
time
better
too.
players. So
I know. Can you imagine that? Because we're loaded already. So if that happens, man, matter of fact, now that you mention that, there was a famous football star, I forget his name, but his kid, a day after they signed that bill into law, he's just signed a $2 million contract. So you're dealing with like 17-year-old kids that are like
That's
making
crazy.
bank. So
mm,
yeah, it's going to be a game changer, no pun intended. But
mm,
yeah, so the phenomenon itself is troubling because we have a lot of materialists in the field who want this to be nuts and bolts,
Sure.
right? And we want it to be a scientific discovery, and they think that our ancestors in religion, or even atheistic ancestors, they have really nothing to add to the research. And my point is that yesterday's flying shields became today's flying saucers, and
mhm.
so we can't limit ourselves to the dogmatic references of antiquity, because who says that 200 years from now, people aren't going to look at our descriptions of this phenomenon and say,
No
see, they don't
doubt.
know anything at all. So we
Can
have
you
to have,
imagine?
yeah,
Mm. Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So, do you see a spike in abductions? Is there has there been,
Oh,
because
good
I know
question.
UFO sightings is like really really high right now.
Yeah. The sightings have grown exponentially. However, and here's something very interesting. We don't know what's going on with the abductees slash experiencers. We don't know if the only people that are being abducted are these individuals, or if they're the only individuals that are remembering their abduction.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's,
Jared wouldn't remember if he was abducted.
No, you wouldn't. Uh, I've been
yep.
chatting with a listener who has pretty common occurrence of either she is being abducted or
Mhm.
she has a lot of dreams that lead her to believe that,
There we go.
and it's given her a substantial amount of trauma.
Yeah, I think it does. Matter of fact, when you're dealing with trauma, there are times when our brain is going through something so traumatic that it literally recreates the situation in its own mind, just so it doesn't have to deal with the reality of what it just experienced. But the dream demon aspect of this, because you mentioned the dream.
Well,
Um,
she's had both. She's had
yeah.
both waking up in another structure with
Mhm.
other beings around her, and also she's had we chatted just last week, and she's had, I mentioned the old hag stories,
Mhm.
but she's had that where she felt paralyzed or pinned down.
Mhm.
um it woke up the next morning with a pain on her chest from where it pinned her down. So
Yeah.
she might be
It's
getting
very
hit from
physical. I'm sorry?
she might be getting hit from all angles.
Yeah, that's very possible. That's actually probable. Because if we go back into history, these entities manifested first as what were called dream demons. Not to say again that they were dream demons or that they were horns and hooves, but we had victims who would simply say, "Hey, listen, I thought I was in a dream state. I didn't think what was happening was real to me." And then the next day, they wake up with very real scars, very physical manifestations of what they felt to be was just a very real, a dream nonetheless. But again, what we're dealing with dream demons who, in Ezekiel chapter 13 in the Bible, it states these entities would separate the soul from the body. They would induce a sleep state into their victims. I'm trying to get my face in the camera because I talk a lot. Anyways, but yeah, they would induce a sleep state, a dream state into their victim and separate the soul from the body. This is where we get soul hunters from. This is also where we get dream catchers from.
Hmm.
So this is the same idea, the same concept. Now, in antiquity, if we were to say, what are soul hunters, we really wouldn't have had a good reference until we started having people who were being abducted and saying, hey, listen, there was a time where I split from my body and I was abducted while watching my body leave.
So almost like an outer body experience mixed
Yes.
in with the and
Oh,
yeah.
it's creepy.
So what do you think the tie-in between aliens and demons are? Do you think that they are the
Well,
Previous souls, or
yes, absolutely, I do. Yes, I see no evidence of them being extraterrestrial. I'm along the lines of with Jacques Vallée, who it did entertain that hypothesis for a while, but they're too unique Their interests are not in terms of giving us science. Absolutely not. Like they're not going and showing us how to work the ships and stuff in terms of, hey, listen, we want you to take this home and teach. Matter of fact, we have it. This is interesting too. We have abductees who were told that it's not your time to remember this, but one day you will remember how to
Oh,
work the ship. Now, I'm going to ask a question because it's very interesting to me. Were they demonstrating muscle memory? Were they teaching this abductee for the purpose of that abductee to be abducted again in the body? Because they weren't. Or is it possible they're taking the soul and they're teaching the soul how to run the ship?
Mm.
oh,
Like
Right?
maybe it's more cost effective to abduct the soul. Maybe in some way it's easier.
Yeah.
It doesn't. And I mean, let's just hypothesize real quick. They could,
Hmm.
and aliens could be coming here to take us.
Right.
They aren't physically here yet, but they have some means of interacting
Correct.
with the ethereal, so they can manage that in
Yeah.
preparation for them getting here.
That's a good question. However, let's get back to the soul aspect of it. I don't know if I mentioned this in the last interview, but I've worked with a guy who his father was a renowned remote viewer, and his father would do his remote viewings and stuff, leave his body, and then one night he interacted with these creatures. He thought they were his guides, but they weren't. These were the soul hunters. And when he got back into his body, this is just like the abduction phenomenon. When he got back into his body, his skin began to manifest symbols, skin conditions. Now this is not unlike Betty Lucas' case.
Isn't that skitrama or
Uh,
skitrama?
um, yes. Oh my gosh, I can't think of it. Yes,
Yeah,
stigmata, stigmata. Yes,
stigmata. That's where
there we go.
the physical
Yeah,
representation of the spiritual things going on inside of you.
correct. Exactly. Very good point. Very good point. So yeah, which would lead like okay, Betty Luca, her husband witnessed her soul being peeled out of her body. That's a threat.
Mm.
That's
Yeah.
that's the worst threat humanity's ever faced. So, but moving beyond that, he said that she during her abduction, she remembers the abduction. She sees the abduction as it's going on without her eyes. Her eyes are in her head, back in the bed.
Mm.
that's really
She,
So
yeah, it's
well. Her
very, very, very
consciousness,
strange.
her consciousness followed her soul, so to speak,
Yes. Oh yeah, yeah.
versus
She's present.
mm.
versus kind of that separation of consciousness. Now that's
Right.
a whole creepy new subject.
Oh God, yeah. And I think that more researchers in the field should be focusing on that instead of thinking this is all lullabies, bunny rabbits and jelly beans. I mean, my God, if China had the ability to abduct a soul, you
Yeah,
want to talk about war? We would just, I mean, it would be okay. We have no choice now because we have no powerful. We have no idea how powerful you really are, because this could be a very small percentage of their capabilities. To us, it's godlike. To them, it could be primitive. We don't know.
Mm.
But going back to the Betty Luca case, when Betty Luca's consciousness got back into her body, then her body began to manifest scoop marks, not vice versa, right? So my point is that I do believe, and there's a growing amount of researchers out there that are starting to think this way too, that a lot of our scoop marks aren't happening to the body first; they're
they're
happening to the
happening to
soul
the
first
soul
and manifesting on the body.
Mm.
again.
Yeah.
Huge.
Creepy as H.
Because
I don't know if I
I
could
mean,
say that word, but
imagine
yeah.
outside of stigmata all the things that you could manifest
Right, right.
through the soul that would then
It's
physically manifest.
correct. Correct.
Do, so do you think that, so maybe possibly
Hmm.
postulating again, aliens may not be demons, but they may have broke through the technology that they understand more of the demons physics.
Yeah, yeah. So that whatever dimension, because I don't believe they're extraterrestrial, I do believe they're interdimensional. But whatever their dimension, the dimension they're coming from, it has to be eternal. It has to be. Because they cannot have eternal life if they're trying to give us eternal life. If they're trying to give us immortality, then they must first exist in that dimension of immortality, which is eye opening. But again, here's the question. I don't believe that these entities are immortal because they are in, like, they have always had immortality. I believe these entities are immortal because they've already died, in the sense that you and I are thinking of death. And that also is balanced by the hauntology phenomenon. Matter of fact, your possessions, a lot of your possessions they begin with entities trying to explain to us what the afterlife is. Why, right? It's very interesting. But the connection between these two ideas is found only in their behavioral patterns, not their descriptions. But what are they after? What are they doing? Well, throughout all of antiquity, we've had entities that would manifest to women in the forms of a man,
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
form of a man, manipulate that individual into intercourse, and then implant and inseminate her with a child. That's called the incubus. That's
Yeah,
Right.
already a huge, right? That's
yeah. We
UFO
talked
abduction.
about her on the talked about them on the last show where they were
Yep,
trying to gain mortal bodies to implant
correct.
a conscience of one of their own into.
Right, right. And I do believe that's the hybridization program. I don't believe it's nuts and bolts DNA. It's more about the soul. It's about their consciousness in our bodies,
Mm.
which we would call possession.
Would we know if we had one of those? If we
Um,
were, if we were one of those?
I don't think that there would be two consciousnesses in one body. That's not their MO. Their MO is to kill the baby or kill the person, pull the consciousness out, and place theirs in the body. Matter of fact, we have evidence of that throughout all of history. Genesis 6. Okay, this is very interesting too. In Genesis 6 in the Bible, in the Old Testament, it says that as men begin to multiply, what does that mean? It means their birth rate grew, right?
Mm-hmm.
That means pregnancies skyrocketed. But then it also basically it says that as soon as these babies got here, they also died. That's why the word Nephilim, if you strip it from the vowels, because it was written in Paleo Hebrew, we have the Hebrew word for stillbirth.
Yeah, yeah. You talked about that on the last show. So
Right.
the Nephilim weren't specifically half angel, half
No.
woman DNA. They were human DNA with
With with disincarnate consciousness placed in the body.
Do you think most possessions are that because the dual consciousness really can't exist?
I okay. So with possessions, I think what we're dealing with is I'm going to put it this way. It's almost like the people who die right now are the people who are born there. Okay, so like the our elders, like the elderly people who die, when they're born in that dimension, they're born as individuals who are almost unknowingly, like they're ignorant of how to operate a body again. So imagine somebody who doesn't know how to operate a car, but somebody takes them out to give them driving lessons. And so now what we have during a possession case is someone who's deceased, their consciousness invading the living consciousness of a person who's embodied. And during those cases throughout all of history, we have what I call memory in motion, and language preference, where these entities will demonstrate whatever belief system they had during their life. The only thing they don't know how to do is operate the body. And so, what again? It seems like it's not just them teaching us how to operate a new body, but it's also how to operate a ship. I know I'm like going in different directions, but this phenomenon is vast. But what we're dealing with again is a species of evil that is using consciousness as a currency. Dr. Carla Turner had an abductee who was abducted by a Jesus, and Jesus held his hand out and said, "All seed belongs to me." 2 months later, she found out she was pregnant. Yet she had not been intimate with her husband in a while. They were having problems. But again, it's an incubus, right? It's an incubus.
So she was tricked by someone
Yep,
playing Jesus.
exactly right. Which is disgusting.
Yeah, that's
Very, very troubling. The baby ends up dying. She has a miscarriage. This is very important. This is not a natural miscarriage, right? It's not like her and her husband or her and somebody else. They did whatever and now she's pregnant. No, this child was conceived by virtue of the abduction.
mm,
Now she had told her husband, "I'm pregnant, but the baby is not a viable child." That was her terms. Now the baby dies when she's abducted again. Jesus comes back to her, hands her a hybrid baby, and here's what they're doing. She says, "I don't know how to explain it." Dr. Carla Turner, she was talking to her. She says, Dr. Carla, I don't understand that. She says, but the consciousness of the baby that died in my womb was in that hybrid baby.
So they did the reverse. They extracted the consciousness.
Yes, sir. There
So
we go.
what if
Wow.
it sounds the exact opposite of what the demons or the incubus normally do, where the incubus take the baby conscious and put one of theirs in. This one,
Right.
they took the baby conscious to put it into another
Correct.
entity.
Is
You're
this a
right. You're
type
right.
of evolution for them?
I think yes. I think it's their version of evolution and mutation. And so, like when we get into David Jacobs' work, when he's talking about, okay, what is this hybridization program? I do believe it's mix and match, honestly. Where they would like in Genesis 6, it wasn't just I'm going to take the consciousness out of the baby. I'm going to replace that baby's consciousness with mine. But where does that consciousness go to? Right? The baby's consciousness. You follow me here? So there's a
Yeah.
switching aspect of it, and that we would call that a changeling in European folklore,
Yeah.
where they'll just switch. And so the question is, if we did have somebody who was like that, would we know it? Most likely not.
No.
Because it would not be two consciousnesses in one body; it would be theirs in a body, which means they would just blend in. They would be present among us, but absent from us. Right? You wouldn't know
Mhm.
it. And so that again, that's the currency of consciousness. But that's really where my research is centered around right now.
Would that tie in like with the old stories of the changelings in the Fae, where they would come and swap
Same thing. Same thing.
swap your child? So this might be happening forever.
Absolutely, absolutely.
You could be
And
surrounded by them.
I could be sitting next to one right now.
You could.
that's very true, very true. Yeah, they're not just body snatchers; they're soul hunters. And
Now, you call those the molters?
yes,
That
yep.
name alone
Yeah.
is creepy because molting is creepy.
Like a
Oh
bird.
yeah, like a bird. Yeah, you know what? The reason I called them molters is because one day, um, my brother was showing me his new tarantula, and I went in there and I'm looking at his tarantula.
Yeah.
I don't like spiders in general. This one
Yeah.
really scared me. And I'm looking at this thing, and I'm like, dude, this thing ain't moving.
Something's
I'm
wrong.
like, yeah, I'm like, why? I'm like there for 5 minutes, like tapping on the K or whatever his glass. So my brother comes over here, he's laughing at me. He's like, "You big idiot!" And he said, "That's its skin."
Yeah.
Oh.
What's left behind? It looks exactly like it.
Exactly right. So what we have are motifs of this phenomenon throughout all of history and throughout all of Abrahamic religion. Your demonic cases. Let's go back to the Dibuk of the 16th century. Beyond knowing that the Hebrew word for possession is dibuk or dibik, the concept of the dibik. Again, this is UFO abduction phenomenon. A concept of the Dybbuk meant the impregnating of the dead in the bodies of the living. Let's go back to the behavioral pattern. What is this species of whatever these things are? What is their motif? Like, what are they enchanted with the most? It's not just abduction; it's replicating their species through our women, using
Mm.
our
Yeah.
biology, using our genetics. And yeah, so it's a very interesting phenomenon. But the narrative that says, okay, listen, there's people that are going to push this faith or fake alien threat. I think that's out of the window at this point, because if our researchers don't embrace this as a threat, I'm not saying we need to go out there and start shooting at stars, duh, right? But
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, there's people like, well, yeah. But we need to treat it as if, okay, at any moment, if they did turn on us, what are we going to do?
There's nothing you could do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So
there's
you talk
nothing.
about behavioral patterns.
Mhm.
What types of behavioral patterns are you looking for?
Okay. I'm looking for the fact. Okay. I'm looking for how these entities will use our belief systems and our memories against us.
Mm.
Like I've been working with different women all around, across the world. One of them was from India. She had been with 8 different partners in her life, and this entity has manifested to her in the image of all of 8 of her partners.
Oh my gosh.
Because what they're trying to do is, again, they're trying to raise the probability of intercourse by suggesting, hey, listen, I'm the man, or I'm the man that you have been involved with in the past. So if these individuals have never been intimate with that person, they're not going to manifest as that person, right?
Yeah.
Like if you went to a bar and some guy hit on you and you're like, you know what, I'm just not really attracted. That incubus is not going to show up in the image of that individual, right? Because it's not about pleasure for him, it's about impregnation. He's making sure the probability of intercourse is there. That's a behavioral pattern that's huge. Number two, not just that, but if you have married people, like if you have a husband and a wife, most likely the husband is going to be deemed impotent, where he cannot perform. That in that way, and I've seen this too, where the entity will come in, and again, the probability of knowing who impregnated this woman is skyrocketed because the husband can't do that. So now, when this entity manifests in the image of a lover or in the image of the husband, which we've had before, now it can impregnate her, right?
Oh,
Knowing full well it's not the husband, it's me this time. So moving beyond that, memories, them playing a role that we give them. So, like if we go into the abduction cases where Jesus manifests, it's not the historical Jewish rabbi Jesus. It's the Swedish Presbyterian, blonde-headed, blue-eyed Jesus that the person in the abduction thought he would look like. Right? They're from the West.
because it's
That's what.
taking from their memories.
Right. That's the interface here, guys. So again, okay. So I have people that are from the evangelical world. They're like, they've watched my videos and stuff, and they say, well, you know what? Whenever I call on Jesus, I know for sure that he'll save me. Okay, that may be your personal experience, and I'm not, denigrating that at all. What I'm saying is one thing we can't fall into the trap of doing. We can't simply say, okay, my experience defines all others.
Right.
And I said, now getting back to this idea that when I call on an ancient deity, they'll show up. That's just not true. The data sample says the opposite. Matter of fact, I just got out of a week-long vacation simply because I had read one passage of Dr. Carla Turner's book, Taken, and it sent me in a whirlwind of emotions. And I just said, you know what? It got too dark for me. I had to leave. I promise you. That's why I was in Rhode Island, enjoying myself. But uh-uh. Let's talk
Mhm.
about one of her cases, the case that set me off. The individual is experiencing the onset of an abduction. She feels it in her body. The vibrations raised. She feels her soul coming out. And so she begins to quote Psalms 23. She starts to pray, Heavenly Father, deliver me from this evil, right? It starts going to the Lord's Prayer, Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. And in mid-sentence, her eyes roll back in her head. Gone.
Mm.
Look at the imagery here. Imagine that. That's worse than anything Stephen King could come up with. It's
Absolutely.
literally, it dissolves any kind of faith. It pushes everybody who has any religious stigma in a corner of thinking, oh my God, if we don't have weapons, we don't have God. We have what's really going on? So again, it's not just that we're calling on the names for help; they're becoming the names that we're calling for help. Like they're stepping into those roles. And I would suggest that throughout all of history, they have created these individuals, not genetically perhaps, but at least religiously, where they would prop up these religious figures and have millions flock to them, just so that later on in history, in the future, they can manifest as these entities, and everybody will think, man, they're telling the truth now.
Do you think?
So there's no protection.
If there is, we don't know what it is.
I
The data sample it's very unique.
I wonder about these alien things. Do you think that they're like what they're doing is obviously from our end perceived as evil, but could there be a motive that they perceive as good
Yeah, I mean, are
outside
we
of that?
just talking survival of their kind?
Or what if they're doing it for survival of our kind in some aspect?
That's a very good question. Um, but again, if we're going into survival of our kind, why are you killing our babies? Why are you abducting 10-year-olds out of their bodies at nighttime or in their
Oh,
bodies
yeah,
and
that's a good point.
performing what would to us be sadomasochistic techniques of torture? Where, again, we have to fit them in the blueprint of humanity. Anybody else that says, okay, well, anytime you talk about the subject, you're just projecting humanity on them. And of course we are. That's the only way we
Sure.
can talk about them.
It's,
It should
it's
be
our only
obvious,
grace
right?
gift. Yeah.
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 People say that stuff as if it's like some big intellectual feat. Like, well, you're gonna project. I'm like, well, yeah. What are we gonna do? I'm not gonna project my dog's worldview on them because I don't even know my dog's. It's the only worldview I know.
Right.
So you know what I mean. But I mean, if we're gonna look at the kind of trauma they're doing, they're accomplishing in our children. Even I mean, we have a 10-year-old that I was reading the other night. He was abducted, and they did some really sexual things to him, and he
Mm.
suffered trauma for the rest of his life. He never got married. He couldn't have intimacy. So the question is, okay, did that help him? Was
No.
it meant to help him? Right? And so we have other researchers that say, well, you know what? Look at all the healings that they've performed. Okay. Now we need to look at that in context. If their true intention is to heal humanity, then they would have healed humanity and not just that one individual. Number two, if they were truthfully wanting to give healing, they would have taught that individual how to heal others the same way he was healed.
Sure.
Right? So
Yeah.
what are they doing? It's almost like it's a demonstration of power. I'm going to show you what fish tastes like, but I'm not going to teach you how to fish. And then we have people in the field saying, well, see, they told us what fish tastes like. Therefore, they love us. They don't want us to be hungry anymore. No, that's not really what's going on. I think it's just like the relationship between us and cattle. Of course, we're not going to wipe them off the earth, but we're absolutely a threat.
100%.
So
Right?
maybe we're livestock to them somehow.
We're breeders.
Yeah. Just
That's, yeah.
like if right now, if we made clones for the purpose of harvesting organs of those
Right.
clones, and we don't know what aspect they may have had into the creation or evolve or evolution of humans. So
Right. Exactly
you
right.
know, and then the dimensional thing, does that mean they can travel across all times?
We don't know. That's a very good question. What we do know is that their ability to manifest mirrors to a great degree what we've experienced in hauntings. They're I think their purest form is an apparitional form. An apparitional form. They're translucent. They can take shapes just like ghosts can, right? They can materialize and dematerialize, or as my friend Carl Johnson says, they can come in and out of existence at will. So, like if we were in a haunting, especially a demonic haunting, we would witness apparitions that would be solid enough to scratch you, but translucent enough to just look at you and walk right through the wall. Well, wouldn't you know that's exactly the kind of creatures we have in the UFO abduction phenomenon, right? They'll land on a physical ship, but walk right through your front door.
Yeah, we've heard that a lot. There was that lady in Manhattan that was
Oh yeah,
that was abducted. They pulled her right through the wall of her apartment, and apparently there were two federal agents that witnessed it. There's a whole bunch of stuff. I'll try to remember her name later.
I
Jamie
can't remember
says,
the name.
Jamie
Fine.
says in the chat, I've always envisioned we are someone's ant farm.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like.
It does feel like that to a great degree. And I mean, one of the researchers that came up with not the hybridization theory, but the ant farm / cattle theory was Dr. Carla Turner. And God rest her soul. I think if she was still alive, that she would just eclipse. I mean, every researcher I know of, man, she would just be on Mount Olympus. But she's incredible. But she came up with that theory, guys, because she had been working with people who were mostly women, who were mostly experiencing the incubus phenomenon. So again, we need to strip this of the dogma, look at the data. We're absolutely dealing with the same entities here. Maybe they weren't abducting people in ships in antiquity, or maybe they were, but maybe, they misinterpreted it. They're angels, really. Like if you go back to Dr. Carla Turner's work again, she has a book called The Masquerade of Angels, where this is very interesting. One of her abductees said, "Are you an angel?" Look at the role there, right? Look what the opportunity is presented. Now they can just say, well, yeah, I am. Of course I am. Right?
So,
Are you? I'm sorry. Yeah.
so what is your view of the afterlife? It's got to be shifting. The more you research, the more you find out. What does it look like?
Okay. So I will say this, that according to my research, that there are two possibilities at the moment of death. It's almost like good people evolve. These are not the same definitions, by the way. Good people evolve, bad people mutate.
Oh,
And it's the mutated
we
versions.
want the bad people to mutate or to evolve. Oh, I want it.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Exactly right. Because again, when you have in the 17th century, you had a case of a Dybbuk where the individual was I don't know if I could say, he was a sexual predator. I'll say it like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that his victim, he actually ended up possessing. Um, it was a
He possessed his victim,
Yes, it was a.
so there was
Well, I don't know
no
if I can say.
end, no end to his torment. He just
No, not at all. But he had the same victimology. So what had happened was, I'm just going to put it out there. Maybe I know we're pre-recording. I think I don't know, but
no, it's live, but put it
okay,
up
okay,
there.
okay. The 17th century, a man took his son to an apple orchard. He said, "I want you to pick the apples on this line of the orchard. I'm going to go over here for a little bit to pick my apples. We'll meet up at the sunset." Okay, fine. Late in the day, the son comes screaming, crying. He's obviously been done something to him. Like, he's muddy, dirty. He's crying. He's in pain. There's blood. He goes to his father. His father doesn't understand what's going on. He takes him home. They can, give him a bath, trying to give him some kind of peace and get him calmed down to understand. Okay, what happened to you? Did somebody do this to you? And so he explains what happened. He's like, I'm just there picking apples. Next thing I know, something's just, ratchets arms around me and starts beating me up, and bam, things happen.
Assaulting.
Yes, there we go. Thank you so much. Yes, assaulting. There we go. I'm looking for the best way to make this palatable because it's very dark. Now, the next day, the boy is possessed. Again, let's look at this pathology here. It's not just intercourse. It's intercourse with the intention of possession.
Kind of like
if it's not a baby, then it's the person.
Right. Oh my
kind of
God.
like
It's very interesting.
breaking down the will of the victim.
Yes. Sadomasochism.
Was it a person who initially assaulted the boy and then died
No.
and then possessed, or was it
It was a predator. What had happened was, when the Kabbalistic exorcists began to interrogate this entity, the entity confessed, "This is my name. This is who I am. I grew up here." Well, why did you choose this victim, right? This is what researchers, in my opinion, need to be paying close attention to. I don't need, we're going to raise our vibrations, we're going to ascend and all this stuff. No. These entities are the worst apocalyptic species known to humanity. When they were interrogating this entity, this man said, "Yeah, I evolved, I mutated." And he said, "The reason I picked this child out of all the others is because it was under that particular apple tree and that particular apple orchard that I performed my first assault." So what does this tell us? He's revisiting his crime scenes, number one. And number two, his sexual pathology has not changed.
Has not changed.
So he's a scumbag in the now,
Yes.
and scumbag after.
Right. Yes. However, again, evolution in terms of good individuals who died versus mutation. Mutation is, I'm growing into the curses. Evolution is, I'm growing into my gifts. So these entities, it's almost as if, again, their victims are the same kind. But let's get back to the Dybbuk phenomenon again. It wasn't just boys, and it wasn't just women. There were entities that would actually have intercourse with women, show up to them in the image of a lover or a husband, or their husband, and then impregnate them. Same thing, guys, right? Same thing.
Sure.
Now, your Kabbalistic exorcists are looking at this woman, and they're trying to figure out why the entity that she's possessed with is crawled up in her womb in the fetal position. So these entities, they're not looking at possession like we do. They're looking at possession as a form of pregnancy.
I mean, it is.
And then, do they try to be reborn through the
normal birthing
incubus
process?
actions?
Yes.
Now, what about the succubus? What
Okay, her role is
What do they
very
look for? Because they have to, carry the baby. What would they be looking for?
yeah. The succubus is the female spirit that will come to a man and seduce him, usually during a dream. Well, now even during an abduction. Now, but what they would do is they would manifest as someone this man would be intimate with, and then it would be used to gain the seed from him to harvest the semen. That's classic UFO abduction. Bud
Hmm.
Hopkins had that happen to him. So what we have here is a self-replicating species that will manifest to us according to our belief systems and our memories.
So
Who would you?
religious dogma plays a huge role in this.
It does in the sense that we were. Yes. Oh, yes. Okay, I'm getting real excited now. It does in the sense that these religious people, your demonologists, were the very first researchers to document this phenomenon. Not just through the lens of theology and folklore, but these are the people that were sitting down in the medieval ages, medieval period, saying, "Listen, what did you experience?" Right? So it's because of their literature and what I know to be true in terms of what I've read that I believe we're dealing with the same phenomenon here, guys. It can come to us in different masks, just like it comes to us in different faces and individuals, but the behavioral pattern has never changed. We're
Mm.
going to
That
inseminate.
that's the key.
That's huge.
That
Yeah,
their behaviors remain the same no matter how they appear.
right. Now I would go as far to say as the only apparition they have is their behavior.
Ooh,
That's the only thing we can see.
that's all they carry. Now, one impregnates a woman,
Mhm.
and that becomes a possession
To a
in
degree,
its
yeah.
own self to a degree.
Mhm.
Um, does that child then maintain those same behavior patterns as it grows into itself?
Yes. Matter
So,
of fact, I have a chapter in my book called "Born of Belief," and I talk about how the ghost will grow in the life of the baby.
see, I don't like that at all.
Well, let's go down to something even darker. In Genesis 6, I've read all the literature on it. I've read the manuscripts, transcripts, and trying to understand. Okay, what really happened? If we were going to say, okay, in that day, the Nephilim were in the land that day. Sons of God saw the daughters of men, and that they were fair, and went in unto them and made unto them wives. That sounds like an incubus, right?
Right?
I'm gonna
Mhm.
be your husband. What's up? I'm what is it, Ricky Suavo or Rico Suavo? What's up, baby? And next thing you know, that's nothing like its true nature. It's definitely not what it really looks like. Then what was it trying to do? Well, it was trying to implant semen in you. Why? So it can create a child with you. So in Genesis 6, I found another manuscript called the Apocrypha of John, and it sheds light on this subject, this narrative in Genesis 6. It says that these entities manifested to women when their actual husbands were away from them. So they didn't go up there and saying, "Hey, we're married," right? That's how some scholars read it, which is total. I don't want to can I say BS. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
okay, okay. Well, I'm on a lot of shows, so sometimes I can't say that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, some people thought, oh, well, they actually married these individuals. They didn't marry these individuals, right? It's the behavioral pattern. It's always the same. So what they did though is they showed up in the image of the husbands
Mm.
for the purpose of intercourse. So then they groomed them into intercourse. The moment of conception, which I know I can't go that far, so I'm going to say bam, bam, right? They looked into the eyes of these victims. This is a UFO abduction motif right here.
Uh-huh.
Stared into their eyes and then changed their apparition to what they really looked like.
While they're
Now,
doing it.
while they're doing it, at the moment of insemination,
Because it's too late to back out at this point.
yeah, they're there. They're going to accomplish this. Now, at the moment of insemination, they stared into their eyes and then reversed their image. Now, that is what's called an obstructed tradition. Now, in antiquity, again, they're playing by these rules. They're playing by ancient rules here. In antiquity, they believed that whatever man, whatever image the woman was focused upon at the moment of insemination, she will recreate that image in her womb as a child. That's why if they would have stayed looking like the husband at the moment of insemination, then the woman would have produced a child that looked like what? The husband, right?
Hmm.
So what they did was they were creating a body, a child that looked like their real apparitions.
That's
Keep your eyes closed, ladies.
tightly.
Which right, which actually, if you go throughout Mesopotamia, with there was a male species of Lamishtu who would do that. And so, what our women in antiquity would do is they would create another face on their chest or above their head, just in hopes that one day, if they went to sleep and came across this entity, that the entity would stare into the wrong face.
Mm.
That's how primitive our understanding of the phenomenon was in terms of, what we're going to do to defend ourselves. But that says everything about what these other entities were doing to us, right? And so, what are we looking at here? We're looking at a species that's using us to self-replicate. Not only that, but again, they're wanting a child that looks like their apparition. So, what they're wanting is a body that looks like their own ghost.
Mm.
And that's why I think they know so much about immortality. They know a lot about it because they're dead.
Yeah.
So I ask, the reason I asked dimensionally if they can travel timelines,
Mhm.
what if they're future humans that are coming back trying to stave off destruction?
Mhm.
Or, we postulated that aliens are future humans that have evolved to
Yeah,
lose
yeah, yeah. That's a very good point.
humanity.
Well, okay. So the evolution in terms of death and entities that, again, even if they've died, like, okay, if they have died yesterday and now they're in the afterlife, would that be time travel?
I don't know.
Right? These are big questions, right?
Yeah.
So let's think about this. Like, okay, there have been abduction cases, a number of them, where the abductor, the entity itself, has told these individuals, you know what? I used to be a human being. I died.
Mm.
Oh,
So if there are two different phenomena going on at the same time, again, I would have to believe it's deceased ancestors that are warring against these entities that are not necessarily the best people that live and died. But I do believe, again, that the role of the afterlife is huge. And I think that a lot of us in the field are being hoodwinked by all of these really cool abduction experiences where, you know what, I had a really good experience, therefore it has to dominate all other people's experience.
right.
That can't happen because number one, we have people that are hanging themselves from their abductions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Living in fear their entire lives.
right, right,
Nightmares. Yeah.
right. Of course, yeah. Family falls apart. They get addicted to drugs. They overdose or something really. Or even here's another aspect of it. Or you get too deep in the research as a researcher, and they kill you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you worry about that?
I do. I
Yeah.
do.
What are you
Yeah.
doing to protect yourself? Yeah.
Yeah,
Let's do that. What's your
because
protection?
honestly,
Oh, okay, okay. I've had very dark moments in terms of attacks, especially lately. I did a show with Chris Carr and Kristen Johnson, and they actually had two different kinds of EVPs. The first EVP was literally the entity saying, "Wait until they hear us. Wait until they can hear us."
Mm.
And then they proceeded to cuss us out and everything. But that was more of a transmission. The first one was. It's very interesting to me. Uh, Kristen told me, she said at the very first uh, hearing of them saying that, she said, the evil that I felt coming across, she said, and I asked Chris Carr about it too. He's like, man, it actually happened. She actually screamed, took her earphones off, threw them against the wall, and ran out of the house. And I said, well, I'm just going to tell you what you felt without you having to tell me. I said, what you felt was an evil you've never, ever, ever fathomed. Something that's darker than any midnight of a man's imagination. It's something that left you just feeling, what are we going to do? And she said, that's exactly right. And so that's the Molter. That's what I would call the Molter syndrome, where it's the fear that's paralyzing. It's not just, it's one theologian called it, Rudolf Otto called it holy other. WHOLLY, in terms of we
Mm.
have nowhere to put them. So, what do I deal with that kind of fear? I watch cartoons. I do a lot of comedies, old school comedies. I smoke cigars. I mean, these are not amulets by any means, but it's a coping mechanism for me to separate myself enough from the work to where I don't just get bogged down with the energy. because words are worlds, and whenever I'm reading the words of abductees, I'm stepping into new dimensions of thought. And I
Mhm.
think that when I step into them, they have the ability to step into me as well. And that's how I guard myself. I separate myself from it to a point where I don't know. That's the way I do it. I mean, I know
Well,
I wish I could say, man, I go out there and read a bunch of books in the Bible. I've done that for 20 years.
Yeah.
Um,
That
you
just
know,
takes you deeper and deeper and deeper, though.
I would have a
yeah,
bathtub of holy water next to my door,
yeah,
Swimming in
Lord.
it.
I
Oh
would
my
just
God.
dunk my well, and that's the
But
thing.
that
So
goes back to that the protection is really not there. That is your reality, but then it can be used against you.
Yes, it can. Yes, it can. Interestingly enough, um, so let's get okay because I know we have like maybe 2 minutes, but uh, getting back to the exorcistic rite of holy water. Remember how I was telling you about? I do believe these are dead individuals, dead entities.
mhm.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you know that the holy water that's used in exorcism was first used in Numbers 19 and 11, designed to cleanse someone from corpse pollution,
So
from
holy
coming
water. It was actually
right.
an antiseptic to uh
Death
divot.
defilement. Yeah, exactly right. There we go. Yes, sir. Yeah, you got it. Again, when you come in contact with disincarnate consciousness, that's when possession would take place. I think that's also why possession's taking place in abduction counts. Same concept.
Yeah, because they're
Mm.
coming in contact.
Right.
Are
Oh, this is
we
good stuff. Yeah.
are we being chosen, or is this just an opportunity, a crime of opportunity?
I think it's both. I think it's both. But what they're doing is very ritualistic, and ritualistic murders are your 160 IQ serial killers. These are
That's
they're
crazy.
individuals that are
Mhm.
not I mean even if we go back to the sexual pathology and victimology of your worst serial killers, they were ritualistic. They were
Oh,
knowledgeable about the afterlife. They had beliefs of the afterlife. The Zodiac killer took
Yeah.
us 50 years to decipher his code. When we finally got to it, he said the reason I didn't kill, I think he killed maybe 5 victims. He said, I believe it was, but if I'm wrong, whatever. He said, he said the only reason I didn't kill 6 and I only killed 5 is because I didn't need 6 slaves in the afterlife. I only needed 5. So
Mm.
that's why he was soul hunting.
So that's what
one of the
he was,
original
and
molters.
we never even caught him.
Oh, I know. This is,
Yeah,
oh man, we're getting some good stuff, dude.
yeah, he.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so we'll have to save some stuff for the next show for
Oh
sure.
my
But
gosh.
let's run through some comments real quick. In the beginning, hi Ryan, Les, Shannon, James. James says, interesting thing is that so many people believe that they have been abducted by aliens, also believe that they have encountered demons and angels,
Right.
spirits, and out of body experiences. Yeah, it is interesting.
They do cross paths. There's
Oh, yeah.
very seldom do you find somebody who believes they've been abducted that doesn't believe in angels and demons or hasn't had some
Correct.
experience.
Yep. That's
Yeah,
his name was Ryan, I believe. Is that what his name? Ryan?
that was James.
James.
Okay, James. James, check this out, man. Go if you haven't already, go check out Ray Fowler's work. Ray Fowler is a researcher that was he was really working with Betty and Bob Luca, and you're exactly right. Betty Luca experienced ghostly apparitions in her house during these abduction encounters, prior to, during, and after. So again, any rational researcher would conclude, well, maybe this does play a role into it, right?
Yeah.
These
There's
are
a
the same, they're happening
correlation.
at the same time.
Mm, yeah.
It's interesting how many researchers will separate those though.
Right. Yep.
Uh,
Most of them are materialists. They don't want, matter of fact, we have a lot of ufology abduction researchers that don't even believe in spirit. This has to be ETs, and
They
it's like,
see
Right.
well,
only the technical side of it, not the
right.
spiritual.
And I think that argument goes out the window once they walk through a door.
So
Yeah.
talk to us about implants. What do we know about
But
implants?
we may
Okay.
have to hang on to the implants. Where unless you've got more time. Do you have more time to hang out?
I can answer that question for sure. The earliest understanding of an implant was, again, had to do with the afterlife. Our ancestors in Mesopotamia, whenever they had an ancestor or somebody that died, their family, they would die. Or if they were necromancers that just, for whatever reason, wanted to do the dark arts. What they would do is they would go out, murder somebody, or they would go dig somebody out of a grave that recently died, take their body into their home. They would take a piece of metal. Where's my camera at? Boop. There we go.
Yeah,
Piece of
we
metal.
see it. Yeah.
Carve the name of an unclean spirit, a dead person, onto and into that metallic piece and implant that in the mouth of that cadaver. Now, the consciousness of that dead person would merge with the metal and possess
The dead
that
body.
dead person and communicate through them. So, what are we looking at? We're learning the fact that they, being in the afterlife, know how to merge consciousness with metal.
I don't like that
That's what.
either.
That's why 65% of your abductees, when
Find
they step on a
implants.
ship, exactly right. Yes, absolutely right.
Well,
Which again,
it's like a dog tag. It's like
yes,
a chip or a signal saying here.
right. But it's
But
their
it's
consciousness
their
in us.
consciousness
Yeah.
in that implant.
Mm.
Ay, ay,
To us it would be magic, but I like there was one abductee that I found in the book Beyond UFOs, and this individual was 10 years old. He was the 10-year-old boy I was talking to guys about before that was abducted. He said, for some reason, he said, I'm getting ready for bed. He said, I turn my light off, and next thing I know, I start seeing through the eyes of something that is approaching my house from the west.
Was this prior to the attack or after?
Right, exactly, prior to it. And he says, so next thing I know, he's like, I'm approaching my house. He said, then I start having symbols fill my mind. And what I read, and then I put notes in that little, by my page, and I called it second sight, or, seeing through two eyes, or four eyes, or whatever you want to call it. But it's a unified stream of consciousness going on here. It had possessed that individual. It was, watch this. If that kid was seeing through their eyes, does that mean they were seeing through his?
So, and this was prior to the attack, prior to the possession.
Yes, absolutely.
So
absolutely.
the kid was targeted. So he had his eyes on that kid and just waited for the opportunity.
Boom. Right. And dealing with implants, I do believe it wasn't like, okay, they found him through Google Maps. Literally, you're just turning on your consciousness in him. Boop. All right, this is where I am. Not where he is. This is where I am now. Is it that fascinating? So that's the answer. That's one of my answers, but I know we're running up time, man.
We'll quickly run through a few more on here.
Okay.
Jamie mentions how Betsy's very beautiful. You're right, Jamie. You say we need weapons, but then say there are none. He mentioned you try to get a different headspace, separate yourself from the.
Is that a good weapon?
For me, it works. Whenever I'm attacked, especially on a spiritual level, it's usually in a dream, and no doubt you live with the funk. You live with the I guess the touch, I call it, the touch of their spirit, their consciousness. And so what I do is I separate myself. I do what I start stepping into me more. I do what I like to do. Because a lot of times in my research, I sacrifice a lot of hours, energy, time doing this stuff, and I lose myself. The more I lose myself, the more they find me.
So what you do is you pursue your hobbies and your enjoyments. Rebecca asks, was the entity answering the questions? This is in the 10-year-old boy. Was it answering through the boy? So the boy was answering the questions as a mouthpiece, or?
Very good question. Okay. So one rabbi likened these entities as wind-like spirits. That's why in Jewish mythology, they say that we are like wind-like instruments to them. So what was happening was the entity was like a wind, breath. So what was happening is you would have this child who wasn't speaking. His mouth was not moving, but the entity was using his body cavity, his voice box to breathe through and would manipulate it. It's just like the Enfield poltergeist case. If you guys look at that little girl, they were actually filling her mouth with marbles and water, and the voice was still coming out of her.
So she was a trumpet.
Right, exactly right. So that's how it was occurring with that little boy.
Okay.
Oh,
Rebecca also says the minute the guy asks, "Look at me,"
Squint.
just squint real hard, and that's talking about when you're in the moment of
Yeah.
inception.
Oh.
So
Jamie mentioned thanks for getting me thinking. Kendra, something new to look at, um, and Jamie's mentioning looking at stuff. Now, before we let you go, plug your books. Where are people going to
Yeah.
go to find
um,
your work?
so my book, A Moment Called Man, is on Amazon, and my second book, The Skin That Crawls, I'm working with it. Like I put it out for format, and it came back, and I'm looking at some stuff on it. Once I fix some things, I'm gonna put it on Amazon, and everything will be good to go. Um, so you can find me on my website is njgillis.com. I'm on Facebook and Instagram as the Nathaniel Gillis. I'm not on Twitter. I think there's a lot of stupid people on Twitter, and I take too much time on it, and I get into arguments that are feeble and peasantry. And that's just because of me. That really isn't anybody else's fault. But that's where you guys can find me, man.
Awesome.
All right. Yes.
Yeah.
So I flashed the book up there on the screen for those watching, for those listening. Look up Nathaniel Gillis, A Moment Called Man. Grab his book.
Thank you.
And we got one more.
Okay.
I'm on Twitter. Watch it. That was Dr. Kim. I'm on Twitter. Watch. Yes, I
Who
like
was that?
to go on. That was Dr. Kim.
Oh, okay.
She's been a guest on the show a few times, and
Oh, is that Kimberly McGeorge?
yes,
Oh, that's my
yes,
girl. I love her to
she
death.
says
Yeah.
she loves you,
Oh, yeah.
Nathaniel, and
Oh, yeah.
I go on Twitter just to see what everyone's saying, and
Yeah.
it kind of gives you a lead into news and pulse, but interacting on Twitter can be
Desperate.
I
pretty
was
rough.
addicted to it. Yeah, I was addicted to it, man. That's one of the bigger things for me too. So I would never do video games because I have that kind of addictive personality, and that's what happened
Oh,
with Twitter, man. So
Oh
I had
yeah.
to cut it out.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'll follow, or if I'm back on Twitter, I'll follow you, Dr. Kim. I promise.
yeah, yeah. And that's the thing. I have people I follow, and I just like to see what their pulse is as to what's going on, like with the news, like talking about Bill Cosby.
Wow, yeah.
A lot of people are very angry about it, and rightfully so. A guilty man is walking free, but that's because the prosecutors didn't do their job.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's most likely he's thinking about countersuing them or suing them in general. And I mean,
And
imagine that.
he
You
probably
win more
can.
money.
He
Ugh.
probably can, because, and honestly, that's where, if all the national strife, if we want to make a positive change, we need to change our justice system. We need to make it so that I don't know how to do it. I whatever, multiple ideas, but we need to do something because it has been an eyesore. But Nathaniel, thank you for coming on.
So
Everyone,
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
go
Yeah.
grab that book, A Moment Called Man. It's on
Yes.
it's on Amazon. I would like to throw out, if you can, go to your local bookstore and order it through them.
Heck yeah. Heck
Amazon has profited enough last year. Go to a local bookstore, however you can order it through there. But grab that book, check it out, and Nathaniel, we'll get you back on here soon for sure.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much, guys. It's been a
Thank
pleasure.
you.
Great
I hope I
visiting with
added.
you.
Thank you. I hope I added something. In
Oh,
this interview,
A lot.
Yeah,
A
yeah,
lot
lack
to
of
think
sleep.
about.
Yeah, you added lack of sleep.
Yeah, right. Lack of sleep. Dang it.
I'm just glad I'm not a
NyQuil
girl.
stock just shut up after this interview, didn't it?
All right,
All
man.
right, guys. God bless you
take
guys.
her
You have a
easy.
good one.
Thanks,
Yep, be
Nick.
safe, man. All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
That was like drinking from a fire hose.
Yeah, well, it always is, especially we're both
So much to think about.
super novices. Betsy knows a little more than me. I am just dipping my toe in, and it's a lot, but I love all these interviews. We will be back next Friday. Who's on next Friday?
I think it's David and Carla.
Ooh, David and Carla. So we're back on next Friday with David and Carla. I'm on tonight at 4:00 time change on the other show. And so, yeah, thanks for joining us. And we will see you next week for sure.
Have a great week.